Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Becca and today we are going to be talking about the series that I've DNF'd, finished and will be continuing on with in the first half of 2019. So I have made one of these videos before. I made one at the beginning of 2019 that recounted all of these series that I DNF'd, finished and we're continuing on with from 2018, and there will be another one of these at the end of the year that talks about 2019 as a whole, but today I will just be talking about all of these series from the first half of 2019. So recently I posted my mid-year stats video, and in that video we saw that I predominantly read books in a series. If you include the fact that most of my rereads from 2019 have been books in a series, around 75% of the books that I have read so far in 2019 are installments in a series. And I'm not sure exactly how many books I've read, but I think it's like 55, 56. So it's quite a large number. So when I did this back at the beginning of the year, I did not have as many series to talk about as I do today. Today we will be discussing 29 different book series. 2 of those I have DNF'd, 6 of those I have either finished or there will be no more books published in that series in 2019. And 21 series I am currently in the middle of and have not completed. So like I did in my previous version of this video, I will be splitting these into sections, and the first books we will be talking about will be the series I DNF'd. So the first one of those is the Giver Quartet by Lois Lowry. This is a children's dystopian series. This is a world where civilization has fallen, and to preserve humanity, mini governments have sprouted up everywhere and mini settlements, and they all have a different system in place to control the population and hopefully stop civilization from falling again. Now I did read the first 3 books in this series. I did enjoy The Giver, but I didn't really enjoy Gathering Blue or Messenger. I do have 1 book left in this series, which is Sun, and I will not be reading it. I did start reading it in the hairdressers back in like January, and I have had no desire to pick it up since. So when I decided I was making this video, I just decided to officially count the series as a DNF. The second series that I have DNF'd so far is the Order of Darkness series by Philippa Gregory. This is a young adult historical fiction series. I read the first book I think back in January maybe, and it was called Changeling, and this is advertised as a historical fiction that follows a boy who I think is training to be a monk and a girl who is the daughter of a lord and becomes the abbess at an abbey. Now in the synopsis of this book it does say that it includes supernatural elements such as possession and werewolves, and it does not contain any of those things. This is a historical fiction. Philippa Gregory is known for writing historical fiction, but as this book said that it would contain supernatural elements, I thought it was going to be more historical paranormal. It is not. It is historical fiction. All of the things that happen in this book that are paranormal are actually things that people say are paranormal but are actually really mundane. So if we think of the witch trials where many women were accused of being witches when actually they were just unsavory women who were too strong-willed or too educated, etc. It's that kind of thing. Those women weren't witches, and there were no werewolves or possessions in this book. Aside from that, I just didn't like the writing and I found it kind of boring, and I decided not to continue with the series. So moving on to the series that I have either finished or I'm up to date on. The first one that I completed was Rebel of the Sands by Alwyn Hamilton. This is a young adult desert fantasy, and it is a trilogy, and this follows a girl from a dusty town in the desert who is desperate to escape before she is married off to her uncle. One day a mysterious foreigner sweeps through the village and she spies her chance for escape and takes it. This book is full of genie and politics and sultans, and I absolutely love the atmosphere of this one. The second book in the series takes place largely in the Sultan's palace, and I absolutely love the setting and the atmosphere of that particular book. I think I gave every book in this series 4 stars, so it isn't my favourite, but it was definitely very enjoyable and I would recommend. What I will say is that the first book in this series is not the best, but the second and the third are definitely worth reading. I then finished the To All the Boys I'd Loved Before trilogy by Jenny Han. You guys may know, if you've been here since last year, that the first book in this series made it to my most disappointing books of the year. The second book made it to my worst books of the year, and then this year I did read the third book in the series, which I think was Always and Forever Lara Jean. I think I gave this book 3 stars. It annoyed me the least out of all 3 of them. The final book in that series will not be featured in in either of those lists for this year, and I'm kind of glad that I did wrap up this series, as it was definitely more enjoyable than the first two installments, and I now think about that series in a lot better light than I would have if I had not read the final book. For those of you that don't know, this series follows Lara Jean, who writes letters to exercise her emotions to the boys that she's had crushes on. One day these letters accidentally get mailed out and all the boys find out about her past feelings, which leaves Lara Jean in a little bit of a predicament as she sort of scrambles to explain why she wrote those letters, etc, etc. In 2019 I both started and finished the Wayfarer series by Becky Chambers. This is an adult character driven sci-fi series that is comprised of 3 companion novels, and these books follow different groups of people traveling through space and their experiences and relationships and what happens to them along their journey. I really love this series, and Becky Chambers is now also a by author for me. I love the way that she writes characters and the way that she makes you feel for them, even though you are only with them for like 350 pages and then the next book moves on to a whole new set of characters. I also love the way that Becky Chambers weaves diversity into this series. It is not always real world diversity. Sometimes it is representative, for example, alien species in place of human races, but I do think that she does it very seamlessly. There are a lot of messages about society in these books, but Becky Chambers does not beat you about the head with the messages contained in these novels, and that is my personal favourite way to read about societal issues, and I think that the way that she managed to put those issues into a very futuristic science fiction series set in space was masterful. So the next ones are all series that are not completed, but I am up to date and have read all of the installments that have been published thus far. The first one of these is An Unkindness of Magicians by Kat Howard. This is an adult urban fantasy that is set in New York City. It surrounds these powerful wizarding families, and every 20 or so years they have a magical tournament where each of the houses has a champion, and those champions take part in magical duels, and the house that wins the tournament will be the one that rules the magician's world. So this was originally published as a standalone. It does very well on its own as a standalone. However, there will be a sequel published to this. I think it's next year. I really enjoyed this book, which is surprising because it doesn't have a great deal of world building in it, which is something that I usually need to enjoy a fantastical story. But the thing that I really liked about this is the way that Kat Howard leads the reader to the conclusions. So as you are approaching a reveal, you will get a little hint about a reveal that's coming, which gives you the time to, as a reader, to work it out for yourself what the reveal is going to be. And then just a few chapters later the plot point will be revealed, so if you did get it, you don't have to wait too long before you know whether you were right or not. And if you didn't get it, it's not like you're missing out on a whole chunk of the story, because the reveal is not too long after the clue is planted, if that makes sense. So I really did like that about this book, and while I don't think that a sequel is necessary, I will still be reading it. Then we have You by Caroline Kepnes. This is one of my favourite books of the year so far. This is an adult thriller that puts you in the mind of Joe, who quickly becomes infatuated with a woman who walks into his bookstore one day, and then he begins to stalk her. This is told in second person perspective, so it's definitely a compelling narrative to read from, and one that I was previously unfamiliar with. What I like about this is that Caroline Kepnes really makes you feel for Joe. You identify with him. Some of the things that he does are really relatable. Even though he is stalking this woman, you know he's in the wrong, but at the same time you're kind of on his side. I have read the first 2 books in this series. I did think it was going to be a duology, but Caroline Kepnes is writing, I think, 2 more books in this series. I'm not sure when they are released, but I will definitely be buying them when they are, because I ate both this and its sequel up. And then lastly for this section we have Wicked Saints by Emily A. Duncan. This is the first book in the, I think it's the Something Dark and Holy series is what it's going to be called. This is a young adult Eastern/Russian inspired fantasy series that follows the perspective of a girl who worships gods and can harness their powers, and also the perspective of a blood mage. This is morally grey. It has a dark romance that's very much like Alina and the Darkling, and it has quite a few plot twists. Now I gave this 3 stars. I didn't love it. I did enjoy the plot and I enjoyed the romance, but I don't think there was enough development. When the plot twists were happening, there was no sort of motivation behind them. I didn't understand why anybody was doing what they were doing, and I feel like we could have benefited from having a lot of chapters from in between the plot points where characters are actually making the decisions that they make or struggling with these decisions, because I didn't have a clue why anybody was doing anything in this book. However, I do think that this series has potential, and I did really enjoy like the last chapter and where the book left off, so I am hoping that some of the issues I had with this are just like debut author issues, and that I will enjoy enjoy the next installment in this series a little bit more. Okay guys, so that was just the warm-up, because now we are going into the 21 series that I am still working on, that I'm still in the middle of, that I've started and I haven't finished. The stack comes up to my knee and I don't even own all of the books, so that's just a little preview of what we've got in store. So the first one we have is The Confessions of Georgie Nicholson by Louise Renison. This is a young adult contemporary story that is told in diary format. I think the first book in this series was published in maybe 1999 or 2000, but this is a series that I enjoyed a lot when I was growing up. This series is more important to me than Harry Potter. However, I did not read the last book in the series because this is a 10-book series and I was in college when the last book was released. I always intended to get to it and I just never did. So now I am rereading the entire series so that I can finally read the last book in the series. I finished book 6 last month and I have started book 7. Louise Renison narrates the audiobooks for these, so I have been listening to them in the car. However, I'm not in the car by myself an awful lot, only for around an hour a week, so it is slow going, but I am working on this one. Then we have Rat Queens by Kurt J. Wiebe and Rock Upchurch. Now this is one that I haven't officially DNF'd, but I'm not in any hurry to continue. I have read the first 2 volumes in this series and I did really enjoy it. This follows 4 like boozy battle maidens that are full of sass, and I absolutely love the storyline of this. They're all kind of bloodthirsty and they have a whole ton of agency. This series is also very funny, as well as having like a great storyline. The only issue I have is that I'm currently up to volume 3, and around that time they did change the artist for the series. Now they changed the artist for a very good reason, but I just don't like the art that's in the next volumes as much as I do in the first 2. They changed to a watercolor style, which is not my personal favorite for graphic novel art. So while I do enjoy this series and I do want to continue, I haven't decided how I feel about the art. I have just added Rat Queens volume 3 to my wish list though, so if any of my friends buy it me for Christmas or anything, then I will continue with it, but I'm not in any great hurry. We also have the DC Icon series, which is authored by 4 very popular young adult authors. These are all standalones with the same theme. I have Catwoman here because I will be reading this one this month. The only book in this series I have read so far is the Batman one by Marie Lu, which I gave 3 stars. I do expect to enjoy this one a little bit more, but each installment in this series does focus on a different superhero or an anti-hero in this case. So I'm not reading these as a series, I'm just reading them if and when, because they are technically standalones, but they are part of the DC Icon series, so I thought I would include them in this video. Then we have the Wolves of Mercy Falls series by Maggie Stiefvater. This is a very character-driven paranormal romance that follows a girl who is kind of obsessed with the wolves that are frequently in her back garden. She was bitten as a child, but for some reason she didn't turn into a wolf, and in this world wolves have very short human lifespans, so when they get to a certain age or when they've changed so many times, they will be trapped in a wolf forever. As it's a paranormal romance, our main character does fall in love with one of the wolves, and he's very strong, but he is approaching the time where he will not be changing back into a human again, so she tries to do what she can to stop it. Now this is a 4-book series, but the last book is, I'm not sure if it's a novella because it is like a full installment, but it does not follow Grace, who is the main character from the first 3 books. So I have finished this series in the sense that I have read the first 3 books. I just haven't read that extra companion novel type thing, which is technically book 4. If you watch my last installment of this series, I had only read 2 of the books at the time, and I did say I wasn't too interested in continuing on, but since then I have read the 3rd book and I did really enjoy it, which made me want to read the 4th book. But now that some time has passed, I'm like in no hurry to pick up the 4th book. But we'll see, because I do still think that that series was really good. It was kind of outdated, it was kind of tropey, but I really like the characters, and also the audiobooks for that series is really good as well. Then we have the Lotushua series by Jay Kristoff. This is the last book in the series because it is the only one that I own. Jade from JDRA Reads bought me this for my birthday. I have read 2 books in this series now. I do just have this one to read. However, it is kind of chunky and I have been reading Game of Thrones. I do tend to read big books and big books do not put me off, but obviously with doing things like Bookopoly, I know that my limit is 1 or 2 books over 500 pages per month if I want to complete these massive TBRs that I set for myself. This is an adult East Asian inspired fantasy that follows Yukiko, who is sent along with her father to find and capture a mythical creature. This is a dystopian-like world that is full of pollution and a lot of animals are extinct, so Yukiko and her father know that this is a fool's mission. They are never going to find a mythical creature when just regular animals animals are extinct, but they can't say no because they would be executed for it. So that's kind of the premise of this. There is like a revolution plotline. This really walks the line between dystopian, high fantasy and science fiction, to which point you could categorize it as any of the three, but this is one of my favorite series. I absolutely love J. Kristoff and I have loved both installments in this, so I am hoping that I can read this final installment soon, preferably before Dark Dawn comes out, because I feel like this will give me an indication of how J. Kristoff wraps up his series before Dark Dawn destroys my heart. Then we have Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling. Obviously don't need to tell you what this is about. I did start a reread of this series at the beginning of the year. I have read the first 4 books. In my mid-year book freakout tag, I did discuss how the reason that I haven't continued is because I don't have a space on my Bookopoly board for children's fantasy. So unless I land on the space that is books set in a fantasy world, I can't include Harry Potter because my fantasy spaces are split into young adult or adult. However, you guys did say that as I only have the last 3 books in the series to read, I could definitely include those as young adult fantasy because the themes are a lot more darker and the series ages up with the readers. So I will definitely be keeping that in mind so that I can continue on with my reread. When I reread the first 2 books in this series, I wasn't that interested, but then I gave books 3 and 4 5 stars. I absolutely loved them. Based on my memory of how I enjoyed them as a child, the darker the books get and the further we get on, the more I enjoy them, although I do think Goblet of Fire is like my ultimate favourite, so I'm very excited to continue and conclude my reread of this. Then we have The Poppy War by R.F. Kong. I obviously have not continued with this because the next book, The Dragon Republic, has not been released yet. The Poppy War is an adult East Asian fantasy that follows a girl who is from a poor province, and due to doing really well in entrance exams, she gets sent to the most exclusive like military training academy in the country, where she trains to be an officer in the army. Her training is interrupted when the country that she lives in suddenly goes to war, and herself as well as the other recruits that she has been training with soon find out that training for war is a lot different to actually being at war. This has a whole ton of trigger warnings, especially there's one chapter in here that has so many trigger warnings, and it's definitely a grimdark fantasy. Now, I didn't love The Poppy War. I didn't feel like there was enough world building in it, and while I didn't mark the book down for this because it is neither the book or the author's fault, the editing in that book was really bad as well. And as R.F. Kong is a debut author, I feel like it really showed in this book. While I did enjoy it to some extent, I just didn't think that it was worth the hype it was getting, because a lot of people were saying that this was the best fantasy of 2018, and I did not agree. That being said, with a lot of the issues that I had with this being down to debut author type of things, I will be continuing and reading The Dragon Republic, although I haven't pre-ordered it and I probably won't buy it on release. I did get The Poppy War from the library, so it is likely that I will do the same with The Dragon Republic. Then we have Isola Volume 1 by Brendan Fletcher and Carl Kerschel. Now, I have this included in a series that I need to continue on with because I'm not entirely sure when the next volume in this graphic novel series will come out. It is a brand new series and I'm not sure what their release schedule for the bind-up volumes is going to look like yet. This is a fantasy graphic novel series published by Image, and it follows this girl who is trying to get her queen to somebody who can help her, as the queen has been cursed and is currently in the form of a tiger. I think I gave this 3 or 4 stars. I don't actually remember a whole lot about the plot of this now, but I feel like I couldn't fully get into this world because normally I find that I need to read at least 2 volumes of graphic novel series before I really get into it and start to enjoy it, with the exception being Saga, because Saga. So I will be looking out for volume 2 of this, although at the moment I'm not sure when it will be released, but every time I do go into my comic book store I do see if volume 2 has been published yet. Then of course we have A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. You guys know I'm hosting a read along for this series. I'm currently approaching the end of book 3, so I do only have book 4 and 5 left. I've been really enjoying this series. I didn't love Clash of Kings. Storm of Swords is my favourite in the series so far, but you can obviously guarantee that I will be up to date with the books that have been published by the end of the year. That's excluding like Fire and Blood and the little novellas, because I have to read them. I have to be present for the live shows discussing these books. So this is one that you can guarantee will be done by the end of the year. Next we have The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I did start a reread of this series. I have only read the first book. It's not a priority because I've read the series before and I was only rereading it because I kind of fancied it. I do want to continue because I think Catching Fire is my favourite in the series. I know that a prequel story has been announced. I definitely want to reread the rest of the series before then. again. I'm pretty sure you guys know what The Hunger Games is about. It's a young adult dystopian that takes place in a futuristic world where every year 24 children from the lower districts are selected to be put into an arena where they have to fight to the death. Then we have one that you guys have been enjoying watching me read, which is the Sookie Stackhouse series by Charlaine Harris. I have read the first 2 books in this series. It is an adult paranormal romance series that also contains a whole lot of murders. As you guys know, I didn't love the first book in this series, but I did enjoy the second one a little bit more, and I have it on good authority from you guys that the series starts to pick up at book 3, which is on my July TBR, and book 4 seems to be everybody's favourite, so I'm very excited to get to that one. Surprisingly, I do seem to be reading this at a reasonable rate. I think we've been reading nearly 1 book a month. I don't anticipate that this series will be done by the end of the year because it is 13 books long, but I'm proceeding at a steady rate, so we'll get there eventually. Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nyan. This is a young adult fantasy about a girl who is she's kidnapped from her hometown and she is taken to the palace to be one of the king's paper girls, which are essentially a group of 12 concubines. Every year the king selects 12 new concubines from the paper caste, which is the lowest caste in society. I think, yeah, the paper caste are full humans, and then you have the steel caste who are part demon, part human, and then we have the moon caste who are all demon. The king is a moon caste. He has 12 paper girl concubines. So this book does feature a lot of sexual violence, and it also has a female-female romance. Obviously, haven't continued with this because the sequel is not out yet. It is out in November, and I am very excited to read it. I gave this 4 stars. I did really enjoy it. It's not my favorite. I didn't overwhelmingly love it, but I'm definitely interested to see where the story goes in the sequel because the characters will be in a new setting. One of my favorite books of the year, we have Aqua Wars by Neil Shusterman. So this is a dystopian that is set very far in the future where humanity is controlled by the Thunderhead, which is an artificial intelligence that essentially manages everything apart from life and death. You can't die in the society of anything like old age, accidents, you can't be murdered. The only way that you can die is if a scythe gleans you. I've been banging on about this all year. You guys know it is one of my favorite books of the year. I have read the first 2 books in the series and I haven't finished it because the toll isn't out yet, but I have it pre-ordered, so as soon as it's out I will be reading it. Then we have the Wayward Children series by Shauna Maguire. This is the 3rd book in the series because I've been getting these from the library, and the 3rd book is the one that I'm up to. This is an adult portal fantasy series that follows a home that is full of children that have been to portal worlds and have returned, and each installment in the series is a little bit different. So the 1st book is set in the children's home. The 2nd one is a prequel that's set in a portal world. I think this one has something to do with the children's home again, and then the 4th one is again in a portal world. So they seem to be alternating like that. The thing about this series is that each installment is very different and so appeals to very different tastes. I don't really like the 1st book in the series. I think it's kind of boring, but I did really enjoy the 2nd book. This has aspects of a fairyland, I think, so I might like this one. And then the 4th one is set in a high logic world, and as a highly logical person, I think I'll enjoy that one, although I know a lot of people don't. As you can see, I do have the 3rd book out of the library, so I do plan on continuing sometime soon. I just haven't managed to fit it into a TBR yet. Then we have the Witcher series by Andrzej Sapkowski. This is a random book in the series because I have been thrifting them, but I did get the 1st book from the library because I couldn't find it anywhere secondhand at the time that I wanted to read it. This is the fantasy series that the Witcher video games are based on, and it follows Geralt of Rivia, who is a Witcher, which is a monster hunter. I have only read the 1st book in the series so far, and the first 2 installments of this series are short story collections that just tell the tales of Geralt slaying various monsters. You guys probably know that I'm not a huge fan of short fiction, so I didn't love the 1st book, but I do want to continue. I did have the 2nd book out from the library, but somebody reserved it and I had to take it back, so I'll need to get that out again. I do want to continue to get to the full installments in this series. It's just unfortunate that to be able to do that, I have to read the short story collections first, and short stories are not my favorite. Then we have the Gossip Girl series by Cecily von Ziegler. Bookopoly was cruel one month and selected this book very specifically, so I had to start this series. Surprisingly enough, I did not hate it. It's very much like a young adult Sex and the City. This is the book series that the TV show Gossip Girl was based on, so it's like bitchy rich children in New York. It is very problematic, and there are some things that happen in here that are not challenged. There are also like teenagers drinking, smoking, etc. But I have read Sex and the City and I have read Gossip Girl, and surprisingly, Gossip Girl is much better written than Sex and the City. I really do not like Sex and the City. I'm not going to say that this book has a lot of literary merit, but I did enjoy it a lot more than I expected to, so it is possible that I will continue on with this series. Obviously, it's not a priority. I'm not massively compelled to continue, but I do think it was enjoyable, and I think that this series may be great for getting me out of reading slumps because it is just like gratuitous trash. Like, it's not good, it doesn't have any literary merit, but it is kind of enjoyable, especially from someone like me who is a fan of the TV show. Although I do know that as the series goes on and as the show went on, they diverged a lot, and the representation of the characters in the show is way better than the book. But I still think that this will be a guilty pleasure series for me when I do choose to continue. Then we have Children of the Whales by Abby Umeda. You guys know I have been reading a lot of this recently. This is a fantasy manga series that follows a boy who is the archivist on the Mud Whale, which is an island that floats along on the Sea of Sand. The Sea of Sand is a mysterious place because aside from a select few people called the Committee of Elders, nobody really knows why they are on there and not a part of regular civilization. They don't even really know that there is a regular civilization, aside from the fact that they know that somewhere else must exist. I have currently read 3 volumes of this manga. I own 5 of them, and I think there are 10 published so far. But as far as I'm aware, the series is not complete, so further installments will be published. But I am enjoying this a lot, and I'm finding that these are great for readathons because they don't detract from my ability to read the core of my like bulk TBR, because they don't take me too long to read, but they are very good at fulfilling those prompts. Then we have the Grisha series by Leigh Bardugo. I am rereading this series and also buddy reading the entire Grishaverse with Jade from JD Ray Reads. July is the month that we will be reading the 3rd book in this series, so I have very nearly wrapped this up. If you guys don't know, this is a young adult Russian inspired fantasy series that follows Alina, who is a map maker in the army, and one day when they are crossing this shadowy area full of monsters that bisects their country, she realizes that she has powers that she didn't know she had, and she is whisked away to the Grisha Academy to hone these powers. I have actually been enjoying my reread of this a lot more than I expected to, and like I said, this should be wrapped up this month, and then we will be moving on to 6 of Crows and Crookie Kingdom. We then have The Land of Ingary by Diana Wynne Jones. The first book in this is the one that I've read, which is Howl's Moving Castle. This was the group book for the Ghibliathon, which is the reason that I read it, and this is a children's book that follows a girl who is cursed by the Witch of the Waste, and because of that she just decides to get up and go find her fortune for some apparent reason. And while she is there, she does encounter Howl's Moving Castle. Howl is a notorious wizard and everybody's a little bit scared of him, even though he's not actually all that scary, and it's just very whimsical, and I like the way that it took fairy tale tropes and turned them on their head. I do plan to continue on with this series at some point. I did enjoy this a whole lot more than I ever expected to. I am sad that the second 2 books in the series are more like companion novels, so they don't follow Sophie and Howl. However, I do believe that Sophie and Howl are in both of those books at some point in some way, so I'm definitely excited to figure out why that is. We then have Orange by Ichigo Takano. This is a contemporary manga series. It does have science fiction elements, but it definitely focuses on the contemporary side, and the science fiction side is very minor. But this follows a girl who has received a letter from her future self saying that if she does not change some things, a boy who's just transferred into her class will sadly not be around in the future. He will have died. This is my favorite book of the year so far. I absolutely adored it. I love the friendship group. I love the characters. I love how it made me feel all of the emotions. The message in this, that you are responsible for saving somebody else's life, is not great, but every other aspect of this manga I absolutely adored. The only reason I haven't continued with this yet is because I don't want it to end, so it's one of those where I want to devour the story, but as soon as I do, because there's only one more volume like this, as soon as I read it, it will be over. And I also think that the second volume is going to be really sad because obviously she's trying to stop somebody from dying. So yeah, I'm putting it off, but I want to read it, and it's a whole situation. And then finally we have The Umbrella Academy by Gerard Way and Gabriel Barr. I bought this and read it because I love the Netflix show The Umbrella Academy. However, when I read this volume, I discovered that there are quite a few differences in the show and the graphic novel. The show is definitely more focused on the characters, and it's a lot more morally grey and gives them loads of like really great backstory so that you really love the characters, whereas this is more superhero-y and action based and does not focus on the characters as much. I think that the pacing of the show is a lot better than the pacing of the graphic novel. If you've seen the show, the entirety of season 1 is just volume 1 of the graphic novel, and I think the motives for some of the characters doing what they're doing doesn't make a whole lot of sense in the graphic novel, but it does in the TV show. I have said that I will continue on with this, one of the reasons being that I already own volume 2, and I know that they are also reviving this graphic novel series and that volume 3 will be out at some point this year. So I will read volume 2 and then I will probably continue. I'm just not in a great hurry to, because I gave this 3 stars. I liked it. I didn't love it. I think the show worked with the storyline a lot better. So finally, those are all the series I have either DNF'd, finished, or I'm currently continuing on with in 2019. It's a lot. I'm overwhelmed by the length of this video and also by the amount of series here. You can bet I'm going to be trying to prioritize some series sometime soon so that I can clear through this and maybe have not such a large stack going through into next year. But that is it for this video. Please let me know if you have read any of these series. Are you reading any of these series? What are your thoughts on the fact that I am reading so many damn series? But please also don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you want to. If you head into my description box, you'll find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish body butter and candle website, the Instagram for that, and 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.